Boom. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Somerville. I am your host, Michael Somerville, and what a treat today. Oh my goodness gracious. You gotta be kidding me. Andrea Syrtash is in the house, and she brought cookies.
I did.
She brought cookies. She's not a fool. She knows the secret to making me happy is a big fat chocolate chip cookie. Welcome to the studio, Andrea.
Good to be here.
And by studio, I mean piles of boxes and things. But it works. Andrea, we've been friends for 10 years?
Almost 10 years, I'd say.
I'm thinking it was around the time I did the glamour thing that you and I connected because you are a relationship person. Is that you tell me. Tell our listeners.
Okay, so here's the thing. In the media, I'm known as a relationship expert, but I can't say that without putting bunny ears around it because it sounds ridiculous. I'm an on-air personality. So what am I going to say? Hi, what do you do for a living? I'm a personality. It sounds ridiculous. So I'm a relationship. Let's say I'm a journalist, author who covers relationships for a living.
But no, I'm the same way because when I became the whole glamour thing, the Jake column I wrote, I was told that I'm a relationship expert, and that was even more ridiculous for me as a stand-up comic. And then I met you, and I was like, well, no, that actually is if anyone's an expert, I mean, I don't.
Well, it's funny you say that because for the first time a few years ago, I didn't laugh as much saying it because I've actually dedicated thousands of hours now. Literally, like thousands of hours to people. And it's the same 5 questions you get over and over again. You probably remember that from Jake, but it's really, when I think about it now, 3 questions. How do I meet someone? How do I leave someone? How do I improve something with someone? But I mean, it's the same course stuff.
Basic stuff.
So it's like, after a number of years of this, you've heard it all with different faces.
I hate to pimp you right out of the gates, but I mean, are there answers? How do you meet someone? Is there a traditional standard? Here's the answer.
Well, I mean, these days my answer is different in 2018 than it would have been when I met you. Though funny for your listeners to hear that you and I really connected through Facebook. We had known of each other through the dating relationship world, but then had an online friendship before we met in person. So that is a very postmodern friendship story there.
That's actually true. And also, you're a married woman, I was in a relationship at the time and I was doing Jake. So that's actually also pretty modern, I would say, because I remember the first Jake column ever was about, it was 1956 or 58, not mine.
You look good.
Not my first column, but the first one ever written. It was about whether or not it's ever appropriate, for a woman to physically be in a man's hotel room. Like if you're on business and you're obviously not in a relationship, you're just on business, blah blah blah. And you have to go to dinner or something. Do you ever step in physically inside his hotel room, or is it never appropriate? And so, talk about times have changed.
Yes.
I mean, and I think the answer was no, if I remember correctly. They said like, nope, don't ever go in a man's hotel room unless you're married to him. But okay,
it's very different. I mean, today, there's monogamish is a thing today.
Monogamish?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There's
I
so
cringe
many,
to even ask what that means,
well, it's
but I think I know.
what you think it is. Yeah. But there's so many versions. I just filmed with BuzzFeed segment on, I even forgot what it's called, something affair. An affair that's kind of not an affair, but kind of an affair. I mean, there are all these new terms for everything, which some people would consider betrayal. And then, we have more singles than ever in history in America.
Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a new world right now. So when you and I started, I mean, I feel ancient. I started sharing relationship advice in 2003 or 4, like right out of school. I had no business sharing anything.
Telling anyone what to do.
That was just so
what prompted it? What made you say, I got stuff to say?
I was like, what was happening is I was living in San Francisco at the time, and I wanted to be a writer. I went to school for journalism and broadcast journalism in particular, and I wanted to write. And I thought, you know what? I'm a good writer, and people are asking me all the time to help them with online dating profiles. Now we're talking again 2003 or 4,
right?
When it was around. I mean, Match.com I think started in the mid 90s. So
right, yeah.
we're like at this point we're almost 10 years in, but there's still a bit of a stigma. And at this point, I mean, I sound ancient, but it wasn't that long ago. But at this point in like 2004. Nobody had thought of helping people with their online dating profiles. And I thought there was a need for help.
That's true.
So
yeah.
I put an ad on Craigslist in San Francisco. I made up a job that just basically said, I will write or edit your online dating profile. I'm a writer. I understand love. I mean, I don't know if I did, but I said that. And I will help you. And I got flooded with responses. And then I got invited to teach in one of these kind of Neil Strauss underground gamey, this is what dudes should do workshops. And I was paid for it. And I was teaching all these men with notebooks. And I thought, wait a minute, what is going on? So I'd say in about 2004, I made up my job.
I love, well, that is, I have 1,000 questions. That's what I admire about you so much. You literally created your job. I mean, and as a comedian, I guess there was technically a path for me, but I mean, you literally just decided, here I am, world, here's what I do. You didn't fill out an application. You didn't go to an office building and submit an interview. You literally said, this is what I do.
And I never knew it would be, this is what I do, for years and years. I just was trying to be resourceful as a freelance writer and find an area where I knew I could maybe get a few gigs. It wasn't, I wasn't thinking, this is my life's path. I thought, I can see what's wrong in some of these online dating profiles. I can help.
Right.
I'll make a little money. Before I knew it, there was such a demand. And now, P.S., it's a massive industry.
It's huge
like
business.
People writing online dating profiles and all of this.
Yes.
Massive. They charge so much more than I was charging. I was really undercharging. Yeah. But it was my entree into, wow, this is really natural for me. So for you with comedy, it was similar?
I always liked comedy. I always enjoyed watching it. I never considered doing it. But then you moved to New York City, and I thought in my lifetime, there was 3 jobs in the world. You were either a doctor, a lawyer, or a fireman. I thought there was only 3 jobs that existed. Yeah. Then you come to New York and you realize there's a million different things you can do with your life. I started checking out open mics. So I was a little more traditional in that I kind of tiptoed into it. But for you, personally, then at that point in your life, what was going on when you're like, I'm so good at relationships?
Do you have an like a laughter sound sound effect? Well, I was in a mess in my Actually, I had been living with a boyfriend who was fabulous guy. We're friends today, but older than me. And, I was young and from Canada, wide-eyed.
Right.
And I was on the verge of leaving him because I was a bit commitment phobic. So I was called the runaway bride for years.
Really?
For years. I was called, this is going to make me sound terrible that I'm admitting. I was called 31 flavors. Like Baskin Robbins, because I like variety, and I'd sample
and never commit.
Don't tie me down. Don't tie me down.
Oh man.
So, but in a way,
31
flavors makes me sound like such a.
You sound like a prostitute.
Yeah, prostitute. It wasn't quite literal, like in the way you think, but it was enough that people knew you can't tie this person. I mean, this person has. I fly around. I'm free spirited, and so. But in a way, that's what makes dating work, and that's why I was good at it. Because if you're not present in dating, you usually sabotage it. And here I was, never worrying about, am I going to marry you? Am I going to have kids with you? So I was able to. I always tell singles, my best kind of dating tip. I just gave this to Cosmo actually yesterday. It's going to be in a July issue, July 2018 on newsstands. But I said, be your vacation self in dating. That's when you're going to make a good impression, because on vacation, you're not overthinking it. You're in the moment. You're present. You don't care if you have a conversation. You get it, right? You don't care where it's going to go.
Yeah.
You just are in that moment. And that's when dating works. And so I was my vacation self, and then these guys would be interested in me because I was a lot of fun.
Footloose,
and I'm footloose. And I'm not really interested in looking forward, so let's just enjoy each other, and that creates a much different date. So in that way, I was good at dating.
That is, and it's a fascinating concept, which I love. Now, let me offer to you my own personal stressors about vacation dating. I was in a relationship, and I've never thought of it this way, but you just mentioned it. I was in a relationship where literally we only got along on vacation. It's just, I mean, when we were in town and when it was day to day, it was brutal. Like, we had nothing, but we'd go away and we would have the best time. And I mean, I guess there's an old cartoon that I used to love. I think it was in the New Yorker. It was a couple. They're sitting out at a cafe on the street in Paris, and they look, just very clearly like American-looking couple. And the woman just says to the man, "I don't know. I just thought if we went to Paris, you wouldn't be, you."
That's perfect.
So there's a downside, I think, to being the vacation self, right?
Okay, well, that's funny. In a relationship, one of my books is called Cheat on Your Husband with Your Husband. And it's about, some of it is about your brain in love. Like, chemically, your brain is different when you're falling in love. Mm-hmm. So one way to game your brain in a long-term relationship is to bring back that novelty. And the quickest way to do that is vacation. It's not surprising that you felt connected on vacation, because what happens is you're exposed to new things. Novelty is very seductive at the beginning of dating someone.
Absolutely, yeah.
So now you're experiencing new, exciting things together, and your brain is thinking this feels really good. Now, I have a story where I dated someone who I hope never hears this. Actually, he's a great guy, but not the right match.
Okay.
Where I thought I fell for him, but I really fell for Hawaii. And if anyone in the Hawaii Tourism Board is listening, I want to write an article called "I Thought I Fell in Love, but I Fell in Love with Hawaii."
I fell in love with Hawaii.
Because this guy took me to Hawaii on like date 2 or 3.
Date 2 or 3 to Hawaii?
Yes.
From San Francisco?
From California.
A little quicker, but still.
Yeah, quick, a little quick. But free-spirited Andrew's going to go along with it, right? Mm-hmm. And I say, well, that's fine. That's great. I'm packing my bags, and within like sunset that night after a massage and a margarita, I was looking out and I thought, I'm feeling something with this guy.
I love this man.
and you know what? Great guy, wrong match, but it was Maui. I was like, Maui's amazing. So vacation self, but if you can channel that energy of excitement, discovery, and presence on just a date in your backyard, like in the city or wherever you live, you're gonna have more fun.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. And I, as someone who actually does work a bit in Hawaii, I get it. Believe me. I'm like, I think this world. I love the world. I love people. And they're like, yes. Oh no, I'm in Hawaii.
That's right. It's no joke. I mean.
At some point, you mentioned, by the way, one of your books. For our listeners, tell us, you've written a few books, right?
Yes.
How many?
I've written 5, but there are 2 I don't want to talk about because they're not worth buying.
Okay.
But the other 3 are good.
Well, you know how many people have written books? Not many. That is, to me, very impressive. In this day and age, we all tweet, we all put something out here, but you've written published books that I have on my bookshelves, actually, autographed.
Yes, you were at my book parties, maybe.
Yes, and so that to me is, talk about, it's one thing to say I'm a relationship expert, to sit down and write a 200-plus page book is... It has to actually make sense. All the words have to have endings. The sentences have to be.
I'll tell you, when I got the first book deal, I said to my husband, Michael, oh my gosh, it's 80,000 words. I don't know 80,000 words. He said, you could use the same word more than once. That literally happened. Because it's daunting, because I said, I'm not that prolific. I'm that writer. You know how writers say, I would die if I don't write? No, not at all.
Right.
I would be out playing with puppies, eating cookies, and I'd be fine. I'm fine.
I don't need to do this.
I'm not dying if I don't write. But writing is a great way to connect with an audience and you're a good writer. You get it. But I mean,
I write set up, punch, joke, though. I'm done. I can't imagine 80,000 words.
It's a lot, and I'm not naturally disciplined because I'm very social. I mean, it's no coincidence that a lot of writers are introverted.
Yeah.
And they get, their energy drained by hanging out with people.
That's true.
That is not me at all.
No.
And no, I think your listeners within 0.5 seconds got that. But the point is that I'm extroverted and I want to be social and connect with people. And I'd get these book deadlines, and I'd have to force myself to write for weeks on end, months on end. But it was a great exercise. I've learned a lot through it.
And where do you would you literally just sit down at a desk in your place and write? I mean, how would you do?
I mean, if it would be a funny video to watch my process. I think it goes something like this. Well, no, one thing I will say that I did that an author taught me early on. I said, if you gave me one tip for writing consistently, and he said, you know what? Don't book anything before noon. So mornings are your writing time.
Okay.
He first asked me, when are you productive? I used to say midnight, and then it switched to, no, actually, first when I wake up. I think I'm more kind of clear.
Yeah,
He said, then, whatever time you wake up, which in my case, let's say is 8 a.m.
Okay.
8 to 11, you're going to... I know you can't relate to that.
No, I've heard of those
8 a.m.,
times.
that's when I finish my set.
Home.
But right. But for me, it was 8 to 11. I was sitting and working whether or not anything came out. And that was helpful.
Okay. Well, and there is, I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, there is that theory or a belief that you are freshest, your mind is clearest when you first wake up. There was some philosopher or writer who famously slept in a chair with the marbles in his hand, and then he'd fall asleep and drop the marbles, and they'd wake him up, and then he'd start typing because he thought he was freshest and most clear.
Wow.
But I guess in this day and age, certainly with the internet, all the everything getting in our heads, it probably is truth to that.
Oh, yeah.
But that's exciting to me. Now, at some point, you then decided you were going to get married. You settled down.
I know, crazy. So
after 31 flavors.
After 31, the book should have been called. Yeah, that's
the 32nd flavor.
Yeah, 32nd flavor.
Good old Michael, who for our listeners is a wonderful, wonderful man. He's one of the coolest, funniest dudes, and I mean these two deserve each other. I love this guy so much. But tell us how you guys met.
Okay, so I also wrote a book called He's Just Not Your Type, and That's a Good Thing. Yeah. And the first line of that book says, it was September 2005 when I realized I'd accidentally fallen for my best friend Michael. I was horrified. So that's the romantic book right there. Michael thinks the book should have had a picture of his face in a bubble with his glasses kind of off center. And his middle name's Albert, and he thought it should have just been called Albert, because I make him sound like such a schmuck in the beginning. But then the whole idea of he's just not your type, and that's a good thing, is Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And Michael was the first person who challenged me in a way that I had not. In a good way, he'd say, I sense you're sad right now. And I'd say, I'm not sad. I'm sad. Well, how did you know that? That would happen. Or we were friends. He knew me. He just knew me really well. And I just never thought of him that way. He wasn't, I thought he was great for someone else. But then I'd start talking about him all the time to my friends. Michael said this, Michael said this, Michael said that. And one of my friends said, do you like him? You sure talk about him a lot. Like we're in grade school, right?
Right.
I said, no, he's not my type. And I realized how ridiculous that sounded.
Yeah.
So I didn't even realize I was falling for him while it was happening.
Wow. So you were just friends.
Just friends. And the whole idea of my book is to get out of our heads and into our hearts, because you don't marry a piece of paper. Michael was a great guy, but he wasn't on the checklist that I thought I was looking for.
Right, here's what I want. Yeah.
Here's what I thought I wanted. So I missed the match, which I think happens often.
Yeah.
And instead, if I were just present, who do I feel like a good version of myself with? Who am I comfortable with? Who makes me laugh? Who supports me? I mean, those are way more important questions.
Absolutely.
And less about who, the book really is grounded in this idea. It's less about who the other person is, which so many dating books focus on.
Right.
Or how to meet that person. It's less about who the other person is. It's more about who you are with that person. That will tell you everything.
I like that, actually. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but as you say it, I remember dating someone who I liked very much, and my friend said, what is it? And I said, I like who I am when I'm with her.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It actually
I guess we shouldn't have broken up.
Do you need tissue?
Darn.
You look really sad.
I screwed that one up.
Well, I mean, it's true, because it feels, it's really hard to be long-term with one person. That's a lot of that. It's no joke that relationships are work, and part of the work is to not get bored.
Yeah,
honestly,
absolutely.
Especially for someone who's a free spirit.
To keep it interesting,
you need to be deeply like each other.
Yeah.
We're so into love, but who do you really like? Who do you like yourself with? Who do you like spending time with?
Right.
That tells you even more sometimes than who do you love. And then it's good to want to take your clothes off together.
Yeah, that also helps.
Yeah.
There's a great comedian, Patrice O'Neill, who's sadly no longer with us, but he used to do a bit that I love so much. He said, it's one thing for a man to love a woman, but if you really want it to work, you need to like her.
It's
like,
true.
I like you. Yeah.
Oh, it's true. I have a falling into like chapter in my book.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because
well, I like that.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Because, like is subtle and like is underwhelming for a lot of people. They movies teach us love is huge fireworks and running into each other's arms in the rain. And, sometimes love sneaks up on you after you deeply like someone. And that's a beautiful thing, because then you're truly in your heart. You're not trying to be with someone because he or she fulfills a superficial BS checklist.
That's it. It sounds like that's what happened to you, actually, which is a lovely thing.
Yeah, so.
Do you, our listeners, and I know when I was doing all the advice stuff, there's a difference between living in New York City and Iowa in terms of availability, options. In this city, in New York, you go around the corner and there's 7 attractive people who are pretty interesting and the whole thing. Yeah. And given both of our lifestyles and what we do, we are constantly meeting people. Versus I'll go to, the middle of nowhere out there in Indiana or something, and there's 2 guys that are available, and you went to high school with both of them, and you marry one of them, and and not to simplify, but there's truth to that.
Yes.
What do you? I don't know. It's a challenge, I think, because I have a lot of people saying to me all the time, how do you ever commit? How do you ever settle down? How do you decide?
Okay, well, that's a good question, and I've thought a lot about this for those audiences in the cities with endless options.
Yeah.
There's a good and a bad side to that. That's obvious, right? You have more options here than you would in middle America, where people settled down earlier.
Right.
And the options can be dizzying. So the thing that I often say to people who are trying to answer this is, replace the question, can I do better? In a city like New York, you can always do better. There's always someone prettier than me, more accomplished, more successful, richer, skinnier, around the corner. The question is not, can I do better? It's, can I feel better? If you replace that question, do with feel, you'll start to see a shift.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Try that.
That's it. No.
That's my prescription.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't mean to go to therapy, but here we are. This is starting to make a lot of sense to me. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah, because can I do better is what we get caught on the hamster wheel, and it's endless.
Yeah.
And it's the big problem of this culture: upsizing, supersizing, trading in, throwing out our phone because, God forbid, it's a year old. Are you kidding me?
Right.
So we're a disposable. There's a disposable side of this culture that should not happen in dating.
And I would argue that these dating apps and all this swipe right, swipe left, all that stuff has just fed into that. People are literally dismissible.
It has.
Yeah.
Funny quick story. I narrated He's Just Not Your Type for Audible.
Uh-huh.
And in real time, because I'm the author, I was able to make edits. I was narrating, but I have control over that.
Right.
There were some things that are universal. I wrote the book in 2008. I sold it in 2000. Yeah, I sold it in 2008. It came out in bookstores in 2010.
Okay.
So think about it. In almost 10 years when I recorded the book, a lot had changed digitally.
Absolutely.
So there were certain lines in the book where I said things like, consider a long-distance relationship and consider investing in a webcam. Things that sound ridiculous. Or I had to edit this part. There's this great new dating app called OkCupid, because OkCupid worked with me on the book to do research and thanked me for giving them exposure. I used to host a dating show for NBC Digital in 2007 called On Dating. Sam Yegan, who co-founded OkCupid, was one of my first guests, thanking me for elevating the conversation about OkCupid. Nobody even believed in a free dating site. So this is how long I've been doing this.
Wow. And you're right, it goes quick, right?
It's quick.
And 6 months later, you seem like a dinosaur. But yeah. Although I will say, and tell me if you disagree, the basic tenets of relationships, the pillars, the things that make a relationship work, in my opinion, are timeless.
You're right.
For the long, yeah. I mean, I go back and I read some old advice. We talked about, the first, do you go in a man's apartment or a man's hotel room as in the 50s, the J column, but I mean, the basic things, trust, communication. I mean, there's certain things that just are timeless.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
I did a TEDx talk last year called "How to Make Love Outside the Bedroom," and it was about spark.
You have, by the way, the best title. You have the best titles.
Well, my titles are great, but not tweetable easily because they take up so much room. I didn't think.
Which is also how I know you.
Yeah.
No, not physically. I meant you have things to say.
That could have been easily. It's like Three's Company. But my book titles are really long with parentheses, as you've noticed.
Right.
But How to Make Love Outside the Bedroom is a talk about, I promised the audience, I will tell you the single one thing you need to know to have better relationships in love, friendship, and business. One thing. Do you want to hear what it is?
I think all of it. Drum roll, I think.
Bit of a setup. Your audience is going to be like, that was so anticlimactic. This is not that interesting. Okay, so the one thing, and I looked at a lot of studies for this, and it's as simple as acknowledgement. I want to be seen, heard, and valued. That's the only thing that matters. And so the litmus test for, am I in a good relationship, friendship, love, or business is, not only am I a good version of myself, that's important.
Right.
But I always say, if you ever hear yourself trying to convince someone of your value, it's not your match.
Ah, I like that. Yeah. Okay.
So that goes for friendships too. If you constantly are trying to convince someone, see me, hear me, value me,
right,
move on.
It's not for you.
It's just not for you.
Wow.
So acknowledgement's very powerful, and I've done a lot of research about cheating, and it's usually because of a lack of attention or approval at home. Acknowledgement is truly the secret sauce, and acknowledgement usually comes in very small, we think of these huge gestures, but it's as simple as at work maybe saying to someone, I'll cover while you have to do blank, or bringing your partner a cup of coffee on a cold day, warming the car on a cold day. I mean, it's the littlest things that make people feel appreciated. That is the game changer in a relationship.
Yeah. That's, again, as you're talking, I'm racing through my history, and and I agree. The little things I did, I really cared. It's the things that they did for me too, actually, because I always think of it as, from a male perspective, a man doing it for a woman doing something, but you're right. I mean, also the things that women have done for me, the little things, and you're oh my goodness, like she was thinking about me, and that really matters.
I make Michael's lunch every night, and the thing that's funny is, anyone who knows, I'm not a domestic. I mean, you know that I'm always flying around, and
you brought cookies. That's all I.
Cookies. but it's little things that I think you have to do for your partner, your friends, to just say, I thought of you enough to blank.
To do this,
And it's not like buying a new, car. You see these things, again, expressions of love on TV are just so different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not brain science. The thing that's really hard about relationships is the easiest things to embrace are sometimes the hardest to practice. We literally treat strangers better than we treat our closest loved ones sometimes. So it's not obviously as easy as you are presenting it in the columns we've written.
Right.
And I wrote for Family Circle magazine last month, the whole thing about positive psychology and doing these things, and it takes work.
Yeah, absolutely. Which anything worthwhile does, though. And that brings us to your current project. And tell us about that.
Sure. So I launched a site called Pregnant-ish.
Pregnant-ish. This is hopefully not like monogamish or...
Well, you know what it is? It's embracing the ish of things. That's what's similar about it. But Pregnant-ish is the state that many Americans, many people around the world have been in, including myself, which I've had an issue since I was 14 years old with fertility. My doctor, even at 14, I was hospitalized with endometriosis, and it's actually Endometriosis Awareness Month right now. And the doctor at the time said, you may have an issue later with fertility. And I was kind of like, awesome, because I was 14. I don't
31 flavors.
I don't want to get pregnant. So, but then it really became an issue later.
Yeah.
I have a whole host of issues that's a medical clinical issue.
Okay.
But the point is, through writing relationship advice for years, I was frustrated that the content around fertility and infertility in particular and miscarriages and all this stuff, not just heterosexual couples. I mean, LGBT more than ever are family building. Singles are freezing their eggs in record numbers, or, you know, single mothers by choice. Or there's so many modern family trends.
Right.
And I felt like the content didn't catch up to the reality of what 7.6 million Americans are going through, which is trying to get pregnant with help.
Okay.
And so pregnant-ish is the state I've been in through the years, where I've literally been pregnant and lost it, or other things have been happening. And it's a really hard thing to talk about, but I'm trying to break the taboo and say to the world, this is not just a medical issue, it's a relationship one, because it affects relationships in the deepest way. The relationship you have with your partner, if you're not, you know, if you're single, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Relationship with your workplace, your family, friends, with your body, with yourself. It's really deep. So I created Pregnant-ish as the first, which is crazy, non-medical site to help this population.
So it's a website.
It's a media site, yeah.
Okay.
So we do videos. We shot video series at NBC Studios.
Oh, wow.
We're starting a podcast soon with Midroll Media, Pregnant-ish.
Okay.
We do live events across the country. We do articles. I have over 30 writers writing.
Really?
So
Wow.
it's a true media site, yeah.
And it sounds like something, as you say, that just literally hasn't been addressed.
It hasn't, and we're getting a really good response,
Wow.
which is really great.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
So I'm still doing,
You're still creating jobs that don't
still
exist.
creating jobs. Exactly. I always say that Pregnant-ish is sci-fi meets the Hallmark Channel. So the content, I mean, I interviewed a man who was a sperm donor 33 times recently.
Really?
He'll be on my podcast. The point is, what crazy content.
Right.
It's also pretty amazing content
That's
about
amazing.
modern family.
More than 31 flavors. 33 times.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That's exactly.
Wow. And so what is next then? Are you going to keep I always ask what does the future hold for you, and it sounds like you're kind of just, as you go, you're sort of exploring and finding and just deciding what's next for you, or is there a plan?
I mean, no, I think what it is I'm evolving my material as I'm evolving.
Yeah.
So if I do become a parent, who knows what's ahead, but for now I'm addressing this chapter that's tough, and it's a company. It's a full company. I mean, I'm incorporated.
That's fantastic.
And at the same time, I just shot a new TV show that's coming out on the Reels Network about celebrity love. So I'm still always going to be doing.
Yeah.
I hosted a show last year for Fox. I mean, I'm out there on TV, sharing. And I've joked with you before, but people say, "Oh, you've moved on to fertility from relationships and sex," and I say, "I know you won't believe this." But sex is connected to fertility.
It is, actually.
So it's the same thing. It's just another chapter.
Oh, you're no longer, yeah. Well, actually, this is part of it.
It's part of it.
Well, I can say personally, it's been an absolute joy to watch your journey. Both of us. I mean, we have sort of grown up in a way in this city together as relationship people. I have not matured at all, but you have. No. In the 10 years that I've known you,
you're doing amazing.
You've blossomed, and it's absolutely just a pleasure to have you on. Tell our listeners where they can check out your stuff. Tell them where to go if they want to check out whatever you want to promote. She's chewing a cookie, by the way.
I took a massive piece of a chocolate chip cookie while you asked me.
Which is most important. I should have continued the question.
No, can you ask me? So, no, thank you for asking. So the best place to find me is AndreaSyrtash.com, but that's hard to spell. Or Pregnant-ish.com, which is easier to spell. But any of my book titles, I also write a book called It's Okay to Sleep with Him on the First Date and Every Rule of Dating Debunked. So Cheat on Your Husband with Your Husband is probably the easiest one to remember. And you can find me there. And I'm on all the socials way too much. And I'd love to connect.
Absolutely. This is Michael Somerville. We thank you guys so much for listening. Please watch us, or please tune in on iTunes. Subscribe, rate, review, the whole thing. It really helps, and it means a lot. Thank you guys for checking out Greetings from Somerville. Is that the name? I always forget the name. Yeah, Greetings from Somerville. We'll see you next week.